I wasn't expecting very much from it, and then I just loved it. It was so enjoyable. All of the weirdness of it just seeps out in this mist. Yeah, and I just thought it was incredibly well executed. So,
and it has resulted in some fantastic memes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It is so meme-worthy.
It is.
It has not aged particularly well, right? Like, you can still watch it and get a kick out of it. But then when you start getting into that third act and things start getting really dark, it's like, I may have grown into a different sensibility as a viewer now than I did when I saw it 15 years ago or whatever.
Oh, man, it's about to get crazy up in here, as the kids say. Welcome. This is the Fright Club podcast, and she is Hope Madden.
It's George Wolf.
We are from madwolf.com. We are talking about the descent into madness this week with a special guest who actually is back for the second time, which I think technically qualifies him as a friend of the show.
I think so, yes.
Okay, so we'll have to get a badge or something. But welcome. Last time out, we were at Gateway Film Center. What? And we were talking about The Shadow of War, and we had a couple of omissions.
We did.
That we heard about pretty quickly.
We did. So the one I expected to hear about was The Gate, which was World War II, of course. And I specified early on there would be no Nazi zombies because we did a whole Nazi zombie podcast. There aren't not Nazi zombies in The Gate, just Nazis. So that was that was an omission. We should have at least mentioned. There were two that were much, much bigger. The first one that surprised me that I forgot to put on here that Ben pointed out right away was Black Cat.
Yeah.
As long as I lamented trying to program that fucking movie.
That might be the reason why. Then it
maybe
finally
so.
did, and it's like an accomplishment.
Yeah, and then I'm like, okay, Black Cat, no longer going to talk about it. And so obviously, so that's World War I all over the place.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And
But
fits it
then,
perfectly. Yeah. Go ahead.
-1.
Or any Godzilla.
But especially -1. As much as we have gushed over Godzilla -1, and then the black and white minus color.
And also, I feel like, if somebody hears that your topic is Shadow of War, I imagine every person but me, that's the first thing you think of is Godzilla. That's the whole point of the whole franchise.
Yeah.
But I forgot him.
We'll take the L on that.
Yeah.
But they were quick to
My
point
apologies.
it out. Yeah, that's okay.
That's what's great about a live audience.
Boo! Are they liking it? Are they having a good time?
But they liked the movie. I think that's the biggest thing. They liked the movie, which was Under the Shadow, which is a really super creepy, really effective. And I think especially when we program these like 6 months out, so I didn't realize that as we showed that movie, our own country would be facing the catastrophe of the religious right trying to take all of women's rights away from them. So it was particularly eerie to watch, and it's just a great movie.
Yeah, it really is. And I think everybody liked it.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody did. So that's good.
And we want to thank our podcast partner, Ginger Nuts of Horror, which is a website that loves all things horror. You can find all kinds of really cool stuff. You can find our horror film reviews, but they also do book reviews. They do interviews with great horror authors. They do other articles about horror TV, horror movies, horror games, horror books. They love all things horror, so check them out. Ginger Nuts of Horror.
Yes, thank you to Jim and the crew. So thank you for that. Of course, we'll be back at Gateway next month, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But we've got a lot to chew on.
We do.
This week, this time out, as we talk about Descent into Madness. We've got our list. Our guest has a list, and we'll bring him in. Welcome one more time. One of our favorite writers, and this was even before we knew he was a horror fan.
That's right.
Scott Woods, welcome back.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
We are glad to have you. We found out that you were a horror fan, and we're like, well, we got to get him on his podcast.
That's right. He was on with us about a year ago. We introduced different episodes of the Wexner Center for the Arts Dario Argento series. And I think we agreed later one of the reasons was because Dave Philippi, who's a great guy, but I guess doesn't know that many really big horror fans, which is why he lined us both up to do that. But we didn't know you were until that day, so that worked out really well. And so in that case, we talked about Argento because that was what the film series is about. And this time, we just wanted to pick something that we wanted to talk about, and we kicked around a handful of different options, and you landed on Descent into Madness, which we, weirdly enough, have not done before, although it's been on our top 10 possibilities forever and ever. What made you interested in doing that one?
There are so many bad horror films, right? But in this particular thread, a lot of the films are good films. Mm-hmm. And so for once, more or less, like you can kind of talk about the subject and you're still talking about good films.
True.
Not just films you like.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Good point for sure. So we've got both have a 5, but we've got a bunch underneath, right, that are worth mentioning for sure.
We do. And there is, so for me, I think the first, just generally speaking, the idea of descent into madness, I always think of Streetcar Named Desire. That's, I think, probably the first, when I was a kid, the first time maybe the concept was introduced to me was Streetcar Named Desire. Obviously not a horror movie, but that's the first one that I think of. And then there are a couple of others that are not, I don't think, really horror films. Spider, the Cronenberg film, and Images, Robert Altman's Images, and then also Take Shelter, which is a masterpiece
we love so much.
I don't think it's, Jeff Nichols. I don't think it's necessarily horror. I'm also not convinced that he's mad. So that was so I wanted to just bring them up because I love all those movies and I think they're influences, but I don't think they really fit. And I know you had a few of them too, Scott.
Yeah, so Possum, which is a trip, right? And you spend much of the film trying to figure out what's real and what's not, but I think it's pretty clear, at least for me at the outset, kind of what was happening. Vivarium.
Yes.
Yeah. I would not have thought of that one.
Yeah,
honestly.
that one took a turn.
It did. It sure did.
I'm never going to go house shopping again. Right? And Beau Was Afraid, which, right?
Yes.
That was pretty obvious. And I wanted to kind of find something that was new-ish, you know, and so there it is.
Yep. And then I have a few that I think are horror that just didn't make the list. Perfect Blue, which is, I really enjoy that movie. Stop Motion is another one that's fairly recent and I think really cool to watch because so much of it is...
that's this year, isn't it?
Or it might have been last year, but it's recent and I liked that a lot. Repulsion, which clearly fits the bill perfectly, but if I cannot talk about convicted child rapist Roman Polanski's movies in a positive light, then I try to avoid that.
Gotcha.
Hour of the Wolf, which is one of our fright clubs that we showed the one time. I'm not sure if he goes mad or if he's a vampire. I don't really say I fully understand. Love it. But, and then the other one, and I saved this for last because we talk about this one often.
We were just talking about it
We
at
were
lunch.
just talking about it at lunch. Wake and Fright, which I think fits the bill. And not only did a lot of the people who came to see that movie at Fright Club Live really hate that movie. Several people really hate me for having put them through having watched that movie. So
we need one of those every now and then.
We do.
We've had a few. But
I stand by. That's Donald Pleasance's best performance ever. He's amazing in that movie.
I can agree with that.
So those are almost made the list. Long list.
Those are good ones.
Anyway, so we'll get into it, and we usually start with the guests because that way I get to be the last word.
At least you're honest about
right.
it, all right?
So your number 5?
So my number 5 was The Babadook. Right?
Yeah.
This is a film that you can take, one of two ways. I choose to interpret it almost entirely as non-supernatural, right? It's such a deep and incredible commentary on parenting, on parenting special needs. It's depression. It's just a therapy session on steroids, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just curious, have you seen the short film?
No.
It came from a short film she made called Monster, which for a while was on YouTube. I think it's gone now. It's a lot more clear about the ending. So a lot of people, we've talked over the years about Babadook, and everybody's so they want to throttle that kid, and then we always say, don't you think that's on purpose?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so the short film, if you can find it, is more clear about what the point is. So I personally like it better when it's a little more abstract.
Yeah.
But if you can find it, it may be out there. I don't know. Called Monster.
Yeah.
Oh, man, now I don't want to see it.
And Essie Davis is amazing in that movie. She's so good in that movie, but also the cinematography and the way that they incorporate the images from the book into the way that they frame everything. It is really, it's such a great movie. It's such a brilliant movie. And it's a great... grief, too. I think it's a really amazing deep dive into grief and the way that it affects you. And I think it's fearless in a way because you just really never see bad mothering, in a way, unless it's like where you are rooting against the person. it's never shown in a sympathetic or empathetic light, except in this movie. I can't think of another example of it, and it's it's a brilliant film.
Yeah, I remember that year the Columbus Film Critics Association gave Essie Davis the Best Actress of the Year award.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not recall.
Yeah, and the other thing about
Good for us.
The other thing about it is sort of like the point we bring up with The Ring, where the videotape had to be creepy. The book has to look as good as it does, and it does.
You could, for a while, you could buy a pop-up book and we almost dropped like $16,000, but then we didn't. Then I came around.
Not for my number 5 film.
That is a great one, though. Okay, moving up to number 5 on our list. Yeah, one of Hope's faves from 1988, and it's Nicolas Cage in Vampire's Kiss.
I'm a vampire! I'm a vampire! I'm a vampire! The tortures of the damned!
Alva, there you are. I love this movie, and we are going to show it one of these days at Fright Club. I think it's one of his absolute most fun performances, and it is kind of a perfect descent into madness because he's seeing a therapist, and he's really kind of on the edge at the beginning of the film, and then he believes he's been bitten by a vampire in the form of Jennifer Beals. And then he just dives all in and starts harassing poor Maria Conchita Alonso and goes a little bit nuts until in the very end, he's completely nuts. And they don't even try to pretend it's anything else because he's got the fake fangs, the plastic fangs, and he's walking around. And who better, right, to just go full lunatic on screen than Nick Cage? And he's so fun in this movie, and right from the very beginning, Peter Lowe, just the way he pronounces his name fills me with joy. I love just about everything about this movie, and I think that Maria Conchita Alonso, who was in every third film in the 1980s, she was in everything. And a lot of times, I don't think that she gets much of an opportunity to act. And strangely enough, it's in this offbeat horror comedy where your heart breaks for this poor woman. Like she did not phone it in. She's terrified. She's desperate, and things don't go well for her. I really think that she's a gem in this film.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it and watch it, you'll see a few familiar faces. Well, Casey Lemons, who's really now mainly a director.
Director, yeah.
She's in it. John Michael Higgins.
I don't even remember him in it.
Yes, he's in there, and David Hyde Pierce.
Yeah,
Fraser is in there as well. So, and the other thing I like about this movie, it was actually a non-union production.
Oh, why do you like that?
Just the fact that since we have experience in a non-union production,
yes, we did,
and the challenges that come up with it. So some of the scenes, like when Peter and Jackie are leaving the bar and hailing the cab, all the workers and everything out there, they just filmed it, just guerrilla style. So like, hey, we know a little something about that.
Yeah. How about you? Are you a fan of this one?
Well, I mean, it's a classic, right? I love Cage in it. It has not aged particularly well, right? Like you could still watch it and get a kick out of it. But then when you start getting into that third act and things start getting really dark, it's like, I may have grown into a different sensibility as a viewer now than I did when I saw it 15 years ago, whatever, right? So, but I rewatched this one, I think maybe like a year ago, and it was still like, just really wild fun. Yeah. Until it wasn't. But then, But like it's probably, everyone says this is Nick Cage's most unhinged performance. Like, every other film they say that. Yeah. And this is truly, I think, if it's not his most unhinged, it is the prototype.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's interesting to watch it now, considering what he has become in pop culture.
Yeah.
And of course, we know from movies like Pig, he's a fantastic actor.
Yes.
But he's also taken on this whole other personality of unhinged Nick Cage. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a really fun. Pig is probably, but I think people forget how great adaptation was, as he played two completely different, really fun, fully fleshed out characters. And then, of course, Leaving Las Vegas. Did he win for that?
Yeah.
He did win for that. That's another great.
Yeah.
Because I think people expect lunacy now and forget sometimes that he is a really good actor, but it's so fun when he's nuts.
So you knew this would be on Hope's list, and that is from 1988, Vampire's Kiss. Okay, so, speaking of Nicolas Cage, I think Scott has him at number 4.
I do. Color Out of Space.
Yes.
Everything's gonna be A-okay.
Yeah. I am a big Lovecraft fan, right? And traditionally, the film's adaptations are abysmal, right? There's very few of them that are, to me, even watchable, let alone decent or good. Stuart Gordon, of course, the director, he's probably the only person that has made one that I actually feel like I enjoyed prior to this one. This is officially the Lovecraft film that I turn people on to now.
I agree with that, because I'll be honest, I am not really a Lovecraft fan, but I enjoyed this movie very much.
Yeah, I think it's also, for me, you either have like the outright Lovecraft adaptations, which are usually very low budget, and they can't conjure the insanity that is necessary, right? Or there's sort of riffs on it, and there's almost no real love. It's Lovecraftian, right? So it just means there's going to be tentacles or whatever. I think this is the first one that really manages both very well, because he describes things that the brain can't process. Like, that's literally what he's always doing. And so, well, you can't make it. And I think that they, especially with the use of color in this movie, they really did a great job of getting us there.
I asked Stuart Gordon about that, actually. So he was here as a guest for one of the 24-hour horror marathons many years ago. And in the Q&A, I said, well, why are so many of the films not great? Right? And I was very careful not to suggest his work.
Right. Sure.
And he had a great answer. He said, listen, and this was, I forget how many years ago now, but I think his answer might be different today. But his answer at the time was that Lovecraft is either very intimate or it is very epic.
Yeah.
There's not much middle. And so intimate doesn't really sell in Hollywood for horror, at least at the time. Again, at the time. Now you could maybe get away with that.
Right.
Right. You could do a long legs now.
Yeah.
Right. But then when you get to something like, Mountains of Madness or something like that, something extremely cosmic, or even Color Out of Space.
Right.
They won't give you the money to realize it. And so I think we just had to wait till now.
Yeah.
Now we can do all those things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I do think this film does a great job with the look, the color, and the just surrounding you with the surreal nature of it all. As it seems like it just starts getting more and more suffocating.
Yeah.
The what's around him and the whole environment. I thought that worked really well.
I do think I detected a note of Peter Lowe toward the end of the movie. But the way he started pronouncing things made me think of
That's
Pete.
just a projection on your part, or that is a good one, though. And I think you make a good point about introducing somebody to Lovecraft maybe that way, because it's a good one.
It's a short list of good ones.
Yeah.
Right?
Of good ones.
It's like that, Dagon, From Beyond.
Oh,
yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe The Reanimator, maybe.
That's really Lovecraft in name only, honestly.
Yeah,
So
you're right.
Yeah.
Technically, so is Color Out of Space.
yeah.
Well, that's not
Well, it's got a bit of it. It
Yeah,
does.
Yeah. It's a line. There's a line.
There is a line.
Color Out of Space from 2019. Okay, that moves us up to what are we up to?
Our number 4.
Our number 4.
Mhm.
I lost. Oh, I see it. Of course. That is from 1994, and we've talked about this a time or two.
A time or two.
And it has it right there in the title, In the Mouth of Madness.
I know this book will drive people crazy. Well, let's hope so. The movie comes out next month.
This is one of my very favorite John Carpenter movies, and I think he does a great job in this movie of like taking Lovecraft and Stephen King and just mushing them together.
Right.
And it's so fun to see how the result of that, and it's also so fun to just all of a sudden go, my God, New England really scared the shit out of a couple of big writers. Wow. And I love the sort of idea of this is that you're writing insanity and it is turning people insane. I think that's a great analogy for writing and for almost maybe what horror writers are almost hoping to do, but I don't think any of it works if Hobbs End isn't as nutty as it is. And I don't think that we'd seen John Carpenter get nutty in that way, in that surreal way before this, you know? And I'm going like, I'm making these circles with my hands because it's the bicyclist where you start to really go, oh, this is going to get weird. And then, Sam Neill. Yeah. Sam Neill is so great in this movie. And of course, Jürgen Portnoy, is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's correct.
Who is Sutter Kane when we finally see the guy from Das Boot, who has such a
such a face.
He's got such a face.
Oh, man.
And, you know, we hear about Sutter Kane for such a long time, and you're like, oh, what are we going to get? And then you get him like, oh, yeah, of course it's that guy. Stay away from that guy. I think the first time I saw this movie, I wasn't expecting very much from it. And then I just loved it. It was so enjoyable. All of the weirdness of it just seeps out in this mist. Yeah, and I just thought it was incredibly well executed. I
think a lot of people at the beginning were quick to draw the correlation between Hobbs End and Stephen King's Castle Rock. But I think maybe Lovecraft fans, and maybe you could speak to this, saying it's more likely based on Lovecraft's Arkham. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I think the Stephen King is a better sell. So to me, this movie does this really fascinating thing where it takes this cursed book trope and it explodes it out into this town, like that you can walk through and talk to people in, and so Hobbs End is like almost, I mean, it's a on the nose Stephen King Castle Rock thing, right? It's more Castle Rock than Castle Rock, right? Clearly, but also you're right with the Lovecraft piece. It's like, yeah, it's definitely got that Arkham vibe. Like, but most people that are general audience wouldn't necessarily connect that. They would just go Stephen King,
right? Well, I think Stephen King.
And they'd be right on both counts,
right? I think Stephen King. The purpose of Stephen King films or Stephen King books is rarely madness. Not never. It is on occasion, but it's rarely madness where that's the purpose, this cosmic concept of something that is too much for your brain to take and it breaks. That style of madness is very Lovecraft, which is what I think is the core of this story, is that, you know, your brain just can't take it. You just can't. And then it just breaks and then you're crazy and then you're just writing all over yourself. And yeah, I do. And I think, you know, I don't know how well it would have worked with somebody besides Sam Neill. He's shady, but he's likable, but he's kind of smarmy, but he's kind of a dork. Like, he's all the things. I just loved him in this.
Yeah. And my favorite bit of trivia I dug up about this movie, the building that's used as a mental institution at the beginning it's a water filtration plant in the beaches area of Toronto. And it was also it's been used in a bunch of films. It was used as the Island Fortress in Undercover Brother.
Oh.
Of 2002.
I see.
There's a reach.
Yeah. So
I do also want to, because I think we mentioned this in briefly, and we did one about hotels. I do love what goes on behind the check-in desk at the hotel in this movie. I think is hysterical.
And that is In the Mouth of Madness, our number 4 for Descent into Madness on the Fright Club podcast. Okay, moving up to this is Scott's number 3. All right.
Yeah, Inside.
Okay, you got 7 minutes. Stay focused. The art in here is worth millions. Proceed to step 2.
What's happening? Come in! It won't open!
Sorry, man. You're on your own.
So this one is a much newer film. Came out like last year. And it only stars Willem Dafoe, right?
Yep.
And this was one I kind of was on the fence about because, you know, when you think about Descent into Madness, you think about things that take time, things that kind of build over time or whatever. And this one was more like somebody just being subjected to something, right?
Yes.
But it still kind of worked for me, right? Because he clearly lost it, right? And it didn't take long.
Yeah.
Right. Just a few creature comforts and inescapability.
Yep.
And the next thing you know, you've lost it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And the way that, you know, Dafoe just kind of commits and he kills this film.
Yeah.
He carries this film. He kills it. the concept seems ludicrous, but it's something that, if you think about it too long, you can kind of see how that could happen to someone, like right now. Like someone is trapped in a condo right now.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, I loved it in the way that he just kind of falls apart, and the decisions that he makes are just profound to me.
Yeah, and it came on the heels of COVID, where it had that added sensibility of we're all coming out of being locked down,
Yeah.
and even in the condo where he's trapped. At first you think it's got all the luxuries. Well, I wouldn't mind being stuck in here. Well, maybe not.
Yeah.
And then sort of like Cage. I mean, if you're going to have an actor who can carry that, I think Willem Dafoe can do it.
Yeah, it is. I think what makes it so unnerving is that it feels reasonable, realistic, and how quickly it could be like, how you just take for granted, your toughness and and you're like, no, that would really fucking suck. That would just drive you right over the edge. There is only a handful of people who've really carried an entire film on their own, and Willem Dafoe just nails it.
Plus, I think it's one that really slipped through the cracks. I don't know how many people have seen it.
Right.
Is it available to stream? Or?
It is. That's how I saw it.
Okay, well, there you go.
But that was a while ago, but I'm sure it's still available. But, it's funny because, this is kind of doing the same thing that Moon is doing, right? And then, but it's so much more intimate. It's so much more realistic. It's unnerving in a way that Moon isn't,
Yeah.
right? So,
I love Moon, except
as do I.
I honestly think the ending was a little too tidy for me, whereas this one is not.
Yeah.
But I do love Moon.
Yeah.
And that is 2023, Inside, Willem Dafoe. Yeah, look it up if you haven't seen that. Fascinating. Scott's pick for number 3. And so we're going up to ours. Black Swan from director Darren Aronofsky.
She's after me.
Nobody's after you.
Please believe me. Sweet girl. Sweet girl. What happened to my sweet girl? She's gone.
Yes. I love that this was his follow-up to The Rustler, because in a lot of ways, they're very, very similar films. They look at sort of the shelf life of a person whose whole identity is in their human form, is in what they can physically do. And in The Wrestler, you also get it with Marissa Tomei's character, because she's a stripper, and right away people are like, "Hey, Grandma," and then I think for me, in a lot of ways, in The Wrestler, it's the Marissa Tomei character that I find more heartbreaking, and I feel like he mined that so well in Black Swan, because it's a character whose whole existence is only giving pleasure to other people who are looking at her and trying to please other people who are looking at her. So not just the audience, but also the director, but also, her mother, and what that's like when you can feel your sort of your clock ticking. And of course, then there's the parallel with the ballet itself, which is also very interesting. But then when you're introduced to the idea of a character who just does things for her own pleasure, and then that's the breaking point for this for Natalie Portman, who's brilliant in this movie, just brittle and perfect in this movie. And I think also Mila Kunis is really, really good in this film, as is Barbara Hershey. And I think that there are not a lot of outright horror moments in this film, but when they come hard.
Yeah, and I love the relationship between her and her mother.
Yeah.
That's a whole other thing going on there that they don't fully explore, but they leave it open-ended.
Right.
That there's things that they didn't really talk about. Aronofsky has a mirror. There's a mirror in almost every scene until the end, of course. There'd be a reason for that. And I'm glad you brought up Perfect Blue earlier, because there's a definite correlation here.
Yeah.
In fact, I think he recreates the bathtub scene, I believe, in Perfect Blue.
I think he does. I never thought about that before.
Yeah.
I never even thought about that. Mm-hmm. Wow.
I think you're right about at the time people thought horror.
Yeah.
But it goes there.
I think it does, yeah. I know that you're a fan.
I am. The only thing that I'll add, because I think your analysis is so awesome on this one, I just really loved the slow build of her descent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think we all kind of get if you are in ballet, professional ballet, you will be damaged. You will experience physical damage, emotional damage, mental damage. Your relationships will be for shit, right? And But still, like the way that her madness kind of creeps around the edges a little bit. Oh, there's things moving in the background, stuff like that. You know, I just thought that was really, really well done, and it was so smooth that by the time we get to the end, it's really kind of mind blowing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was fascinating, too, that Natalie Portman has talked about one of the tough things about filming this was up until this film, most of her career, she had worked with vocal coaches to make her voice deeper and less childlike. And in this one, they wanted her to go backwards and make her be more vulnerable and more childlike, which she found sort of difficult in trying to get over that for so long. But it was necessary because her that part of her character had to be so meek until she went over the edge.
Yeah. And I do really, Mila Kunis is great in this movie. Because she's got a big voice and she's got a big presence and she's, she's just lush and fantastic in this movie, which she needs to be. And the two of them, next to each other, they're just is really effective. It's an effective image of this like brittle, breakable thing, and then this just lively, eating it all up kind of a character. I just thought they were great together.
And also the always welcome
Vincent Cassel, that's right.
Black
and a
Swan
Winona
from
Ryder
2010.
sighting.
Oh, yeah, that's right, Winona Ryder.
That's right.
That was sort of the beginning of her kind of comeback from the, she had that bad press and the whole shoplifting thing.
Yeah.
I think this was the kind of step one to getting back out there in people's good graces.
It could be. I am so unaware of when Stranger Things started, like when the TV series began.
Yeah.
Could have been right after this. I don't know.
When did we start hearing about it from our niece?
Yeah, I know.
That's where we have this. You haven't seen it yet?
Yeah.
You're dead to me.
I think we're still dead to her.
Well, we got her that super cool Legos.
We did.
It was so cool.
Is it called the Upside Down?
The Upside Down.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
A whole Lego
Legos,
of it, yeah.
I've seen that.
It was fantastic. So we're off the track. Black Swan from
That's
2010, our number 3. So, man, we're moving up there to number 2, getting into the rare air.
That's right.
So mine was The Platform.
No creo que sobreviva usted mucho tiempo.
I watched this film without knowing really anything about it, and right away I was blown away. Conceptually, the whole concept of a prison that is just basically comprised of neglect, this I shouldn't say just neglect, because it has this balance between largesse and neglect, and it's constantly this back and forth between wealth and despair, and how materialism and capitalism and the way that we generally build societies around those values, just the way that it exposes the humanity of people when they're faced with the lack of those values, right? It's just a really powerful, it's obviously there's literal things happening in it, but to me, it's such a strong allegory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? This film to me works so much better when you don't see it as a prison, you see it as society.
Yes.
When you don't see it as, a guy who's trying to escape or two people trying to escape, and you see it as, hope or avatars for hope and avatars for caring. And then watching all of that still kind of fall apart and be futile and be the world.
Yeah.
It's just, and then visually, it's remarkable.
Yeah.
It's disgusting, it's brutal, but without, being traditionally, until it starts picking up steam, but without being traditionally bloody and traditionally gory, It's just like, no, the excess is the horror.
Yeah.
The way that we treat each other is the horror.
Yeah.
Right? It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's from 2019. I think they just announced a sequel. I believe a sequel is in pre-production, maybe?
If we must.
If we must, right.
I feel this is like Cube, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
The first one, you got it right. Don't.
Yep.
Whatever.
Exactly. And I think it's a fascinating premise to take because people have used, the phrase for years, the have-nots living off the dregs of the have. Well, this takes it and let's make it literal.
Yeah.
You're actually living off the dregs of what comes down to you on that platform.
I think for me the most powerful moment is when you realize that the floor above does everything they can to spoil the food before it can get to the next floor.
Yep.
Like everything they can to make it absolutely just gorge themselves and then piss on it so the next people can't get anything out of it. I thought that was like a really powerful image.
All right, we want to give the director credit on it. You're going to take a stab at pronouncing it.
Oh, Jesus. I failed Spanish, but it is the way that I say it is Galder is the first name, and then Gastelu Urrutia.
Okay, we'll take that. And the writers are Pedro Rivero and David De Sola. And, it's one of those, I guess, even if you praise the premise like we just did, still you could see how easily they could paint themselves into a corner.
Yes.
How do we get out of this?
I remember thinking
Love
that watching
idea.
it. Like I remember thinking that watching it, and
Right.
boy, they get out of it brilliantly.
They do,
It's
and I
very well written.
also think it's fascinating how they have it decided about who gets to be on top and who gets to be on the bottom. Yeah, it's a fascinating piece of social commentary and allegory, as you said, and it's nasty.
It is nasty.
But in a good way, and that is, for our purposes anyway. That moves it up to our number 2. Oh, man, we haven't talked about this before. This is good. Of course, from 1980, it's The Shining.
Is there something bad here?
I fear you will have to deal with this matter in the harshest possible way.
Here's Johnny.
Completely unreliable assholes.
I have the feeling that some people are asking themselves, what does she have at number 1 then?
That could be.
It's possible. And I love this movie, obviously. I love Nicholson's performance. I love his descent into madness in this movie, although I agree with most people that he's clearly a little off right at the beginning in even the interview to get the job. He's not, like, wholesome in any way, but,
Which I think was one of Stephen King's main, when I read about his problems with it, I think that was at the heart of his criticisms.
Yeah. I do feel like people who are who hold that novel like with much love, it's probably harder for them to just embrace this movie as I have just embraced this movie because I saw the movie first. I saw the movie when I was a little kid. And so it's the preeminent version for me. But I think that it's in terms of just watching a descent into madness and then the way Nicholson manifests that, but then also what Kubrick surrounds him with, right? With, Lloyd and the whole, the different rooms and what is in the different rooms and the fact that they don't necessarily even make any damn sense, like the blowjob in a bear suit. What's happening? Why is that going on there? I love the madness. I love the idea of the madness. It's one of the things about like The Crazies, the movie The Crazies, the original. I like them both, but the original is because they really are just behaving crazily, and crazy is random. It's not sensible. It's not logical. You can't outline it. Okay, this is what crazy looks like. Crazy is crazy. And I like that about the movie The Shining is that you're like, what the fuck? But then Nicholson, his descent is it's broad, it's big, and it's neon colored. But it's fun to watch. It's fun to watch him in the way that it's fun to watch Nick Cage be crazy. It is fun to watch Jack Nicholson be crazy.
And they do a great job. Kubrick does a great job of the isolation of that gigantic resort and how that could, sort of like going back to the Willem Dafoe thing, he's in that really beautiful condo, all the creature comforts, and it would slowly work on you.
Yeah.
And we have to give an RIP, of course, to Shelley Duvall, who
Oh,
passed away just
that's
a few weeks ago.
Who's great in this movie.
She is.
Yeah.
She is great in this movie. But all of it.
And her cigarette ash, which also is great in this movie.
Yeah, but the now iconic shots of Danny, big wheeling down the carpet.
Oh.
And then, of course...
Well, the sound design of this movie is amazing.
Yeah. The blood and the elevator.
That's right.
All of that has become
right.
such a part of popular culture now that, of course, has been legendarily lampooned by The Simpsons.
Oh, yeah. In one of the
great.
greatest things that's ever happened to TV ever.
Exactly.
The Shinning.
The Shinning.
Oh, my
it's
God.
Great. But it has become that part of lore, and for so many great reasons. But yeah, Nicholson, before Cage, you think of Nicholson in that way, like who's going to just go bonkers?
Yeah.
And go back to even Cuckoo's Nest when he
Yeah.
was pretending to be crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
It's that same way, but it works on you in such a spooky way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this film. I've watched this film 100 times, literally. And I saw it before I read the book. As you know, I'm a big student of all things Stephen King as well. And so I'm glad that you mentioned that, King had issues with this film and why he had issues with this film, because they relate to this whole Descent in Madness issue. In the book, Jack Torrance is, as you mentioned, already got issues, right? He's not just this happy family guy who takes his kid and his wife out into the woods and then he loses it. He's already struggling with alcoholism, abuse, things like that. And so, and as I recall, through family, right? So it's like a legacy issue.
Right.
And so he's bringing all of that into this haunted hotel, right? But, and no, the film doesn't do that, right? But what the film does do, to me, is make this a way more, not more, I'm going to say more. It's an equally powerful descent because it seems like it comes out of nowhere and this hotel just drives him mad.
Right.
So it's really on the nose, right? It's not like the book where the hotel kind of takes advantage of his weaknesses, right? The movie says, no, this hotel is hardcore, right? This hotel will take anybody and twist them, which almost makes you wonder how it's still open, right? Like a place that can do that to a person should just be doing that all the time, right?
Yeah.
But The Shining, it's Kubrick. It's amazing. It's not the book, right? Like almost across the board, it's not the book. But I love this film because it's not the book, right? On its own, it does this really fascinating thing with deconstruction of the mental state of Jack Torrance, and it just kind of sprinkles the supernatural on top a little bit, right? Which are all issues that if you are torn between these two masterworks, the book and the film, look, Dr. Sleep is out there for you, right?
Right.
It threads the needle so well.
It does.
So well. If
George
you love
loves
a book,
Dr.
it's fine.
Sleep.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Well, it also, I'll be honest, it benefited from low. I didn't have great expectations for it. I didn't. And I thought the way he handled it was really, really good. I mean, because that's ballsy. Yeah, I'm gonna make the remake to The Shining. That's a tough nut to crack. And I thought he did a great job.
And the movie is, again, a little different than the book, right? So when I read Dr. Sleep, I'm like, okay, all right, I see what Stephen intends. And then when I heard the movie was going to be marrying the book and the movie, I was like, okay, good luck.
Right.
Good luck with that.
Right.
Yeah.
Man, did they pull that off.
They really did.
Especially the ending is just flawless. It's better than the book. And while Stephen King gets a lot of crap for bad endings, Dr. Sleep it's not a bad ending in the book. They could have done something closer to the book, but the film that they made was just so smart.
Plus, the film has Rose the Hat, am I
It
right?
was one of the greatest villains ever.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
And I'm told she's attractive.
Who said that? I didn't say that.
I feel like I've stepped into something.
Oh, yes, The Shining from 1980. That is, our number 2. So, heck, what's number 1? Well, first we got to find out, and I actually love Scott's pick.
Angel Heart. 1987's Angel Heart.
That's it, Johnny. Take a good look. However cleverly you sneak up on a mirror, your reflection always looks you straight in the eye.
I know who I am.
This was a film I was too young to see at the time. It came to me a little later. But I love a good devil story.
Yeah.
And this is Mickey Rourke at the height of his powers.
Yes.
And it's pretty different from the book, which I read many years after the fact, after several viewings of the film. And this movie just, this was one I almost hesitated to pick because the descent is literal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
I was like, is it madness? But to hell with it, right? So, but yeah, this film was so fraught at the time that it came out, with Lisa Bonet and all
Right,
that stuff.
yeah.
Yep.
which, at the time, the Cosby Show was still happening and
Oh,
still
yeah.
popular. And it was just like this forbidden film, and everything surrounding the film was just so over the top in terms of the media. And then when I finally got to the film, I was just like, wow, I want to live in all these places, these evil places. I want to go to New Orleans right now. I want to go to Louisiana. I want to do all this crazy stuff. What is with this creepy carnival?
Yeah.
Just amazing. And the way that Rourke just begins to fall apart through the film.
Yeah.
Right. Pretty much right away, right? Like he's got this really tough luck Chinatown thing going on, and then the wheels really pop off. Right?
Oh yeah.
So De Niro, I mean, what can you say?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. He should play Satan more often.
All the time.
Yeah. 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 I love this movie. I am exactly old enough to have seen it right when it came out. Shortly after it came out, I used to babysit my next door neighbor's house. They had a VCR. We didn't. We watched Angel Heart about 100 times. I mean, and it is the same thing. I remember I don't remember having a keen interest in going to New Orleans until I saw that movie, and then I'm like, right now. Mm-hmm. I love all of the death sequences. Like, I love how imaginative and how, when they happen first and then at the end and they go back over and they show you what really happened, and you're like, oh my God, that's nasty.
Oh, nasty, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of nastiness. Yeah, and Mickey Rourke is glorious in it. And of course, Louis Cyphre and them fingernails and that egg.
Yeah.
There's so many just brilliantly creepy moments in this movie.
Yeah, this is Alan Parker, director Alan Parker, and he adapts.
From The Wall, of course.
Yeah, and he adapts the screenplay. And I did see this in the theater. I'd have been, 23. And I'm not going to pretend that I guessed the ending. I did not.
No.
It caught me flat-footed.
Yeah,
I'll
me
be
too.
honest with you. And then, you know what it reminded me years later? The ending of Usual Suspects sort of reminded how.
Oh, yes.
Identity and oh no. And you're seeing all these things come back and him realizing the mess he's in. Yeah, it is. It's dirty and sweaty.
It's so sweaty.
So
Quite
palpable.
Very sweaty.
Yeah. And Lisa Bonet got in some trouble.
Yeah, she did.
Because that was some adult fare.
It
for the
was,
family.
which is too bad because she's quite good in it.
She is. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is not one that I would have jumped to mind for Descent into Madness, but it definitely works.
Yeah.
For
sure.
I love that.
I mean, it ends with a literal elevator.
Yes,
So.
it surely does. Yeah.
Understood.
Got it.
Just in case. Yeah. 1987, Angel Heart. That is great. So, yeah, you brought it up. What could be more Descent into Madness for you than The Shining? It's got to be
The Lighthouse.
The Lighthouse. Of course.
How long have we been on this rock? 5 weeks? 2 days? Help me to recollect.
Love it so much. Robert Eggers from 2019. It's Robert Pattinson's Willem Dafoe. Man, yeah. First of all, we cannot wait for Nosferatu coming out here soon.
Yes. Yeah. Very excited about that. Love everything that Eggers has ever done. Love the look of all of it. But this one, the look and the sound design in this movie will make you crazy. And it's so brilliantly shot. It's so beautifully shot in black and white, of course. And the wikis. That's the other thing is I had to look up vocabulary.
Wiki.
I did wiki.
From Wick
my God.
Trimming.
Yeah. And another Willem Dafoe. Willem Dafoe. you like me lobster? I love a Willem Dafoe wiki conversation. He was so good. Robert Pattinson was so good in this movie. I love the slow shift in power between the two, and then also what they're drinking is they never consume anything that won't make you really violently ill, and you just think, and they never sober up, and they're just gonna. But the actual, just to watch how it ramps up, and they get weirder and weirder, and they do worse and worse things, and their relationship becomes so nutty. And then, of course, some truth comes out, and you understand what's going on and why they're there. And he works with a lot of the same elements that isolation and claustrophobia and being trapped and farting. Maybe less that I was going to say that other filmmakers have worked into their descent into madness. But I just think what he does with it was, how could you possibly have any idea what was coming next? Which we've said before when we review a movie. if I never guessed, that's an extra star. If I had no idea what was coming, even if I didn't like the result, it's an extra star because I could not guess what was happening, and I could not. That mermaid, what?
Yeah.
And then the sort of Gorgon or whatever was in the. I'm like, what is happening right now? Where's that lobster I was promised? Yeah,
Well,
I was
Eggers-
completely lost, and in the best way.
Eggers has said in interviews that the early drafts of the script he thought were too clear. So he wanted to make it make it more abstract, and so that the audience is just as confused as Winslow and goes mad. So I think you got it in the plus column for that. But it looks fantastic. The whole aspect ratio, the whole black and white, the whole light and shadow play. And the sound, especially the foghorn.
Oh, yeah.
That'll drive you crazy.
It will. And it's funny, this film showed during Nightmares Film Festival one time. I don't think it was part of the festival. It was showing at that time period at that theater.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the other, volunteers who works the festival, she would just periodically pop in and then pop back out. So she saw the whole movie, but not in sequence. And I remember thinking to myself, it would still work. It would work exactly as well. No scene makes any damn sense. So it doesn't matter at what point you see it. So,
and it has resulted in some fantastic memes.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It is so meme worthy.
It is.
Could that be a whole new podcast? No, but
what do you think?
What do you think of
this
The Lighthouse?
Not a fan.
Okay.
Not a fan. Yeah, I could have used a little more clarity.
Okay.
A little more ground.
Fair enough.
I was really struggling with this one, and I really wanted to like it all. And there are things that I do love. I think that it was shot amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks awesome. I just wish I knew what the hell was going on. So that worked, right? Like if you wanted to be discombobulated, congratulations, man. I was like, I don't know what the hell is happening.
Now, have you been a fan of Eggers before that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because we all love The Witch, right? I mean, that's...
I like The Witch.
Yeah?
Yeah.
But yeah, big fans of The Lighthouse, and that is our number one for Descent into Madness. Man, it's a good list.
Yeah.
Darn good list.
It was. It was a fun podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Scott, for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure anytime.
Now, what else have you got coming? I know you're busy. You're
bit.
always keeping busy.
A little bit, yeah. Got a big poetry series coming up in September. Got my big Halloween exhibit coming up in October. So yeah, and then that'll be my year. That's it for my year.
Okay.
Two big things.
Where can we find you on the socials?
Oh, so I'm on everything, just as Scott Woods. That's pretty easy to find. Just look for the black guy with the Doctor Who scarf.
That's right.
And then I do all the programming through Streetlight Guild.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
My nonprofit organization has a building on 1367 East Main Street. And we'll be doing a 6-day Halloween miniature village there at the end of October. We do that every year, but this year it's even bigger.
Yeah, we missed that last year, and I can't remember what it was that we had to go do, but I was very sad to have missed it. We will not miss it this year. We will not miss it this year.
I think you'll dig it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look forward to it.
I think it took us 4 years, but we know what we're doing.
I'm excited. I'm excited to see it.
All right, we're going to be back next month at Gateway Film Center for the August edition of Fright Club Live.
Yep, we'll be there on August 9th, and we're going to show Cooties. Which is a departure from some of the last few that we've shown. They've been a little bit more sort of highbrow, and I thought, how lowbrow can we go? And I landed on Cooties, which is, I find very, very fun. And we're going to talk about teachers in horror movies, which I'm excited to do. It's one of those that I've kind of had a list put together forever and ever, and so I'm excited to look at that. And we're actually going to show, originally we were going to show Basement Buddies, which is our most recent short film. But we actually are screening Basement Buddies in August at a film showcase here in Columbus called Gravity Film Showcase. And so it doesn't make sense for us to show it again like 2 weeks prior. So I think not because I didn't give myself enough time to get somebody else's short film. No, because I really want people to see. We're going to show the proof of concept for Obstacle Corps is what we're going to do.
That goes back a ways.
It does go back a ways, but it's fun.
It is fun. Yeah, so that'll be a short film. We started here the last few months showing short films in front of the feature. I think that's gone over pretty well.
Actually, we should say, because this last month we showed The Altruist, which is Matt Smith's. We'd shown The Provider a few months back. I'm a huge fan of his work. And we showed The Altruist, which is so insane. It's such a wild, bizarre, creepy, crazy movie. And everybody, and I'm hoping that Matt hears this, because everybody after they just kept shouting, Daniel, Daniel.
Right.
So if you have not seen this short film, I don't know how you find it. I should look it up and put it in the show notes because maybe it is available somewhere, but it is a great short film and people really loved it. So we want to thank Matt Smith for letting us show that.
Yes, indeed. And so that's August 9th.
Mhm.
Okay, look forward to seeing you out there if you can make it. Gateway Film Center on High Street in Columbus, Ohio. You can find us on Instagram and on Threads.
At Fright Club Live.
At Fright Club Live. And also, if you haven't joined the Fright Club Podcast Facebook group, we'd love to have you in that as well. So just put a request in. You can join the fun in there. And we look forward to hearing from you. What do we miss on this? What do we get wrong?
There are so many. I mean, there are hundreds and hundreds of options. So be kind. We couldn't put them all in here.
Thanks again to Scott Woods, our special guest. Look him up. And thanks again, as always, to Ginger Nuts of Horror. Keep in touch if you can. Until next time, she is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And he is Scott Woods, and he's going to take us out.
Oh, stay frightful, my friends.